A woman one day takes a hike around the forest by her house to take some time off from people. She stumbles upon a teapot, grabs it, and, obviously, rubs it. A genie appears. "Hello, lady. You've released me from my trap. Now I shall grant you 3 wishes. But there's a catch. Whatever I give you, your husband will get 3 times larger." The woman looks at the genie and says, "I want $1 billion. The genie responds, "As you wish, but your husband will get 3 billion. The woman continues, "I want a beautiful castle." The genie says, "As you wish, but your husband will get 3 beautiful castles, and they will be larger than yours." The woman then stops and thinks for a moment before claiming her 3rd and final wish and says, "Now, give me one tiny, tiny, tiny little heart attack." A Russian man walks through the streets of Moscow. As he passes by the headquarters of a major company, he notices a poor man in decrepit clothes standing by the building, seemingly waiting for something, looking at the sky. Another poor, crazy weirdo, he thinks. He keeps on walking. The next day, he passes near another company's HQ and sees the same poor man, seemingly waiting for something or someone, eyes up in the air, but this time with a luxury watch and classy shoes. Strange. I thought he was homeless at first, he thinks, noticing the upgrade in clothes, but he keeps walking. The following day, while walking near another company's HQ on his way home, he sees the homeless guy again, barely recognizable with a brand new suit and designer coat waiting outside, looking at the sky. So our protagonist finally goes and asks him, "Excuse my rudeness, sir, but I saw you 3 days ago and you were just a homeless man. Now you are dressed in super expensive clothes I'll never be able to afford in my lifetime. How did you pull that off in 3 days?" The homeless guy just tells him, "Oh, it's simple. You just wait outside those company buildings, and oligarchs will fall from the windows." Phil had always been the king of practical jokes. Weddings, in particular, were his favorite battleground. If a friend was getting married, they could count on Phil to orchestrate something outrageous, whether it was replacing the wedding cake with a look-alike made of styrofoam, sneaking a remote-controlled whoopee cushion under the bride's chair, or rigging the honeymoon suite with alarm clocks set to go off at random hours. But now it was Phil's turn to walk down the aisle, and he just knew that payback was coming. As his wedding day approached, he braced himself for the worst. His friends had been suspiciously quiet, and that made him even more nervous. Yet, to his surprise, the ceremony went off without a hitch. No unexpected objections, no switched rings, no hidden whoopee cushions under the pews. At the reception, there were no streakers, no food dye in the champagne, and not even a single exploding party popper. Even when he and his new wife, Emily, left in their getaway car, he was stunned to find it in perfect working order. No missing tires, no Vaseline on the door handles, no tin cans dragging behind. By the time they arrived at their honeymoon suite, Phil was convinced he had somehow dodged the ultimate revenge. Still, being the prankster he was, he checked the room thoroughly. He lifted the toilet seat, inspected the shower head, and even ran his hands under the pillows and sheets for the classic cornflakes in the bed trick, one of his personal favorites. But nothing. The room was clean. Relieved and feeling victorious, he and Emily finally collapsed into bed. The next morning, they woke up starving. Phil grabbed the phone and called down to room service. "Good morning. I'd like to order breakfast for 2, please." At that very moment, a soft voice from under the bed whispered, "Make that 5." One evening, over a quiet drink at their favorite pub, James and his friend Mark found themselves deep in conversation about life and relationships. "James," Mark said, swirling his glass thoughtfully, "you're a great guy. Successful, kind, decent looking. Why have you never married?" James sighed and gave a small, wistful smile. "Well, I suppose I've just never met the right woman. I guess I've always been searching for the perfect girl." Mark chuckled. "Oh, come on. Surely, in all these years, you must have met at least one woman you thought was perfect. A shadow of nostalgia crossed James' face. Actually, yes, there was one. She was incredible. Kind, intelligent, beautiful, everything I ever wanted. She truly was perfect. Mark leaned in, intrigued. Then why didn't you marry her? James took a sip of his drink, set the glass down, and sighed. Because, unfortunately, she was looking for the perfect man. Last night, as we sat in the living room, my wife and I found ourselves in a deep conversation about life, mortality, and what it truly means to live. At one point, I turned to her and said, "Honey, promise me something. If I'm ever in a vegetative state, totally dependent on machines and liquids from a bottle, just pull the plug. I don't want to live like that." She looked at me with admiration, her eyes full of love and understanding. Then, without a word, she stood up and got to work. First, she unplugged the cable TV. Then, she shut down my computer, followed by disconnecting my phone and my Xbox. I watched in horror as she tossed my iPad onto the couch and removed the batteries from the remote. But she wasn't done. She walked over to the bar, grabbed my finest whiskey, rum, gin, and vodka, and poured them straight down the sink. Then she went to the fridge and threw out all my beer. I sat there, speechless, my life flashing before my eyes. She turned back to me, dusted off her hands, and said with a sweet smile, "There you go, darling. You're free now." An elderly couple were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, so they decided to return to the little town where they first met. They sat in a small coffee shop in the town and were telling the waitress about their love for each other and how they met at this same spot. Sitting next to them was the local cop, and he smiled as the old couple spoke. After the waitress left the table, the old man said to his wife, "Remember the first time we made love? It was up in that field across the road when I put you against the fence. Why don't we do it again for old time's sake?" The wife giggled like crazy and said, "Sure, why not?" So off they went out the door and across to the field. The cop smiled to himself, thinking how romantic this was, and decided he better keep an eye on the couple so they didn't run into any harm. The old couple walked to the field, and as they approached the fence, they began to undress. The old man picked up his wife when they were naked and leaned her against the fence. The cop was watching from the bushes and was surprised at what he saw. With the vitality of youth, the wife bounced up and down excitedly, while the husband thrashed around like a wild man, and then they both fell to the ground in exhaustion. Eventually, they stood up, shook themselves, and got dressed. As they walked back towards the road, the cop stepped from his hiding spot and said, "That is the most wonderful lovemaking I have ever seen. You must have been a wild couple when you were young." "Not really," said the old man. "When we were young, that fence wasn't electric." Murphy showed up at Mass one Sunday, and the priest almost fell down when he saw him. He'd never been to church in his life. After Mass, the priest caught up with him and said, "Murphy, I am so glad you decided to come to Mass. What made you come?" Murphy said, "I gotta be honest with you, Father. A while back, I misplaced me hat, and I really love that hat. I know that McGlynn had a hat just like mine, and I knew he came to church every Sunday. I also knew that he had to take off his hat during Mass and figured he would leave it in the back of the church. So I was going to leave after communion and steal McGlynn's hat." The priest said, "Well, Murphy, I noticed that you didn't steal McGlynn's hat. What changed your mind?" Murphy replied, "Well, after I heard your sermon on the 10 Commandments, I decided that I didn't need to steal McGlynn's hat after all." With a tear in his eye, the priest gave Murphy a big smile and said, "After I talked about 'thou shalt not steal,' you decided you would rather do without your hat than burn in hell?" Murphy slowly shook his head. "No, Father. After you talked about 'thou shalt not commit adultery,' I remembered where I left my hat." A woman, seated while flying in economy and holding her baby in her arms, was startled when the man sitting behind her bent forward to say, "Ma'am, that is one ugly baby you have there." The woman, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, was so shocked she could barely retort, "Well, I never." The man continued, "I'm just being honest with you, ma'am. I mean, I've seen some ugly babies in my time, but yours is a real showstopper." Quite overwhelmed, the woman called a flight attendant over. "The man behind me just hurled the most hideous insult at me, and I demand to be moved to a different seat," she said. The attendant gave her a consoling look of sympathy. "I'm so sorry, but as you know, our flight is fully booked, and until we find someone willing to switch seats, I'm afraid I won't be able to reseat you. We do apologize, however, and if you like, in the meantime, we'd be happy to offer you anything from our in-flight menu free of charge." "Fine," the woman said with an air of resignation, "but I've never been so insulted in all my life. What a horrible man!" "Well, I just said the truth," could be faintly heard from the seat behind. Hearing that, the attendant resolved to make the woman feel better as soon as possible, telling her, "Any item of food or any alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage, whatever you choose, it's on us," she said. "And if you like, I'll also bring a banana for your comfort monkey." A Nobel Award-winning physicist who was afraid of flying was on a speaking tour of the nation's top colleges. He traveled by limousine to each destination to give his speech. After 24 engagements, the physicist and the limousine driver were having dinner before the next speech. The limousine driver commented that he'd heard the speech enough times, and that even though he didn't understand it, he felt as if he could deliver it word for word. So, the physicist agreed to trade places and let him give the speech, and the physicist would sit in the back and wear the limousine driver's uniform. After giving the speech flawlessly, the limousine driver opened the floor for questions from the students. Typically, there were none. However, at this particular university, there was a rather egotistical student who thought he was smart enough to compete mentally with the Nobel physicist. The question took 5 minutes to get out and would require a rather lengthy explanation and some complex calculus to answer. Without batting an eye, the limousine driver responded to the young student by saying, "The answer to that question is so easy, I'll let my limousine driver, seated in the back, respond." A Glasgow lawyer went duck hunting in rural Aberdeenshire. He shot and dropped a bird, but it fell into a farmer's field on the other side of a fence. As the lawyer climbed over the fence, an elderly farmer drove up on his tractor and asked him what he was doing. The litigator responded, "I shot a duck and it fell in this field, and now I'm going to retrieve it." The old farmer, Peter, replied, "This is my property and you are not coming over here." The indignant lawyer said, "I am one of the best trial lawyers in Scotland, and if you don't let me get that duck, I'll sue you and take everything you own." The old farmer smiled and said, "Apparently, you don't know how we settle disputes in mint law. We settle small disagreements like this with the 3-kick rule." The lawyer asked, "What is the 3-kick rule?" The farmer replied, "Well, because the dispute occurs on my land, I get to go first. I kick you 3 times, and then you kick me 3 times, and so on, back and forth, until someone gives up." The lawyer quickly thought about the proposed contest and decided that he could easily take the old codger. He agreed to abide by the local custom. The old farmer slowly climbed down from the tractor and walked up to the attorney. His first kick planted the toe of his heavy steel-toed work boot into the lawyer's groin and dropped him to his knees. His second kick to the midriff sent the lawyer's last meal gushing from his mouth. The lawyer was on all fours when the farmer's third kick to his rear end sent him face first into a fresh cow pie. Summoning every bit of his will and remaining strength, the lawyer very slowly managed to get to his feet. Wiping his face with the arm of his jacket, he said, "Okay, now it's my turn." The old farmer smiled and said, "Nah, I give up. You can have the duck." A man is sitting alone at a bar, just staring at his drink. He stays like that for half an hour. deep in thought. Suddenly, a loud, troublemaking truck driver steps up next to him, grabs the drink, and drinks it all down in one gulp. The man, visibly upset, begins to cry. The truck driver, feeling guilty, says, "Hey, come on, man, I was just joking. I'll buy you another drink. I can't stand seeing a man cry." The man shakes his head, still in distress. "No, it's not that," he says. "Today has been the worst day of my life. First, I woke up late for work. My boss was furious and fired me. Then, when I left the building, I found out my car was stolen. The police said they couldn't do anything, so I took a cab home, but when I got out, I realized I left my wallet and credit cards in the cab. The driver just drove off without a word. And then, when I finally get home, I walk in and find my wife in bed with the gardener. I'm so devastated, I leave and come straight here." The truck driver, shocked, says, "Man, I'm really sorry, but it sounds like you've had the worst day ever. So why are you crying over your drink?" The man looks at him and says, "Because just when I was thinking about ending it all, you came along and drank my poison." A young man becomes a successful businessman very early on in life. Being a faithful member of the church, he has always paid his tithe for years and years. He later falls upon hard times, and so he talks to his banker. His banker lets him know that things are worse than the man had realized. He couldn't even afford the church's tithe. Upon these hard times, he fell away from the church. For years, he accumulated debt trying to keep up appearances and become successful again. One day, the pastor of the man's old church approaches him and asks why he hasn't been coming to church and paying his tithe. The man confides in his old pastor and confesses that he's come by a bit of bad luck and so fell away from the church. The pastor says, "Of course you've fallen onto tough times. You've fallen away from the church. Start coming back to the church and paying your tithe, and you'll be back in God's good graces in no time." Do you really think that will help? I'm in pretty deep here. Well, I suppose if you really want to, you could pay the tithe for the time you were gone from the church. The full 10% of everything you accumulated should belong to the church. So the man and the pastor meet with the man's banker and calculate everything he's accumulated over his years out of the church, and they both sign. The pastor opens the envelope and exclaims, "Wow, $60,000! It's more than the church could have hoped for." The banker says, "Yes, up until now, us too. Now, how will you be paying?" A midget with a lisp decided to buy a horse, went out to a farm and asked the farmer if he had a horse for sale. "I sure do. Come around back and I'll show her to you." Out back, the midget walked around the horse and asked the farmer if he could see her teeth. The farmer lifted him up to see the horse's teeth, then put the midget back down. The midget walked around the horse again and asked if he could see her ears. The farmer, getting irked, obliged him again. Third time around, the midget asked if he could see her. By now, the farmer was pissed, walked the midget around to the backside of the horse and said, "You want to see her? I'll show you her." With that, he hoisted the midget up and crammed his head into the horse's. Little arms and legs flailing, he waited a few seconds and pulled the midget out and set him back down on the ground. Midget gets up, shakes his head, gasps for air, and says, "Perhaps I should rephrase that. Can I see her run around for a few minutes?" A mother and her young daughter were walking through New York City when the mother tried to hail a cab. As they waited, the little girl noticed a group of women dressed in flashy clothes loitering on a street corner. Finally, the mother got a cab and they climbed in. The curious little girl turned to her mother and asked, "Mommy, what are those ladies doing over there?" The mother, trying to dodge the question, replied, "Oh, those ladies are just waiting for their husbands to come pick them up on their way home from work." The cab driver, overhearing the exchange, turned around and said, "Come on, lady, tell your daughter the truth. They're hookers." There was a brief pause of awkward silence. Then the little girl, with a confused look, asked, "Mommy, do the hooker ladies have children?" The mother, without missing a beat, replied, "Of course, dear. Where do you think cabbies come from?" One day at a farm, a blonde woman curiously reached out and touched the package of a horse. Suddenly, the horse neighed loudly, kicked up dust, and bolted across the field at lightning speed. The owner, watching in shock, turned to the blonde with a sly grin and said, "Ma'am, now how about holding my package too?" Puzzled, she asked why. He replies, "Because I've got to catch that horse." John and his girlfriend Mary decide to become bank robbers. Mary does the actual robbing at gunpoint inside the banks, while John waits outside as the getaway driver. They are initially successful, with a string of heists that make headlines, and they become folk heroes. Until one day their luck runs out and they get caught. At trial, the judge condemns Mary to 10 years in prison, while John gets 2 years. However, once they get to their respective prisons, they discover that due to a clerical error, John will be serving 10 years and Mary only 2. Despite her insistence, John convinces Mary to keep quiet about it. After 2 years, Mary gets out and she continues to visit John faithfully every month, and they exchange letters and phone calls regularly for the remainder of his 10 years. Finally, after he does his time, John gets out and is joyfully reunited with Mary. They get married and move to a different state and start anew, leaving their life of crime behind. They raise a family with children and grandchildren and eventually reach old age after having lived a happy marriage. On their 50th wedding anniversary party, the entire family and friends are gathered. A great celebration is had, with many laughs and stories recounting their life together. The conversation turns to the secrets to a happy marriage. One of the guests asks Mary why she decided to stick with John while he was in prison, despite all of the hardships. Mary answers, "Well, you know you have found the one when you finish each other's sentences." An elderly priest, his eyes sparkling with good humor, turned to the younger priest beside him and said, "I must say, your idea to replace the first few pews with plush theater-style seats was inspired. It's remarkable how quickly those seats fill up now." The younger priest chuckled softly and gave a modest nod as the elder priest went on. "And I'll admit, when you suggested giving the hymns a modern twist, I was skeptical, but bringing in that rock and roll gospel choir has truly revitalized the congregation. It's wonderful to see every seat filled, all the way to the balcony." "Thank you, Father," the younger priest replied, his tone humble yet pleased. The elder priest patted him on the shoulder, his expression kind. "Your enthusiasm and fresh ideas have been such a blessing to our parish. Truly, most of your innovations have been marvelous." The younger priest detected a hint of hesitation in the older man's voice and braced himself for what was coming. Sure enough, the elder priest continued, "That being said, I think you may have gone a step too far with the drive-through confessional." "But Father," the young priest exclaimed, leaning forward earnestly, "attendance for confessions has doubled, and our donations are through the roof." The elder priest stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Yes, I've noticed. Your efforts haven't gone unappreciated, believe me, but the flashing neon sign on the roof that says, 'Confess and drive away,' well, let's just say it's a bit much." A man is driving through the backwoods of Montana when he spots a sign in front of a rundown shack, "Talking dog for sale." Curious, he knocks on the door. An old-timer answers and tells him the dog is in the backyard. The man steps out back and finds a well-groomed Labrador sitting there. "You talk?" he asks. "Yep," the lab replies. The man's jaw drops. Once he gathers himself, he says, "Okay, what's your story?" The dog sighs and begins. "Well, I discovered I could talk when I was a pup. Figured I should put my gift to good use. So I told the CIA. They immediately recruited me, and before I knew it, I was flying all over the world, sitting in rooms with world leaders and spies. Nobody ever suspected a dog could be eavesdropping. I was their top agent for 8 years, but all the travel wore me out. So I took a job doing undercover security at the airport. I sniffed out smugglers, exposed criminals, and even earned a few medals. Then I met the love of my life, settled down, had a bunch of puppies, and retired. Now I just take it easy. The man is stunned. He hurries back inside and asks the owner, "How much for the dog?" $10, the old man says. $10? This dog is incredible. Why so cheap? The owner shakes his head. Because he's a liar. He's never left the yard. James had been dating Linda for a while, and now the time had come for the nerve-wracking part, meeting her father. He arrived at the house, trying to appear confident, but as he sat across from the old man, he absent-mindedly chewed his gum. Linda's father, a stern-looking man with a booming voice, scowled at him. "Young man, you're sitting in front of me asking for my daughter's hand in marriage and you're chewing gum? That's a sign of disrespect." James quickly stopped chewing and swallowed the gum. He straightened up and replied, "I'm sorry, sir. I only chew gum when I drink or smoke." The old man's frown deepened. "You drink and smoke, and you're here to marry my daughter?" James hesitated but decided to be honest. "Sir, I only drink and smoke when I go to the club." Linda's father's eyes whitened. "You go clubbing too?" James sighed. "I'm really sorry, sir. I only started clubbing after I got out of prison." Now the old man was on edge. "Prison? You've been to prison? What did you do?" James lowered his voice, leaned in slightly, and said, "I was arrested for killing a man." The father-in-law gasped and nearly choked on his tea. "You killed someone?" James nodded solemnly. "Yes, sir. I was furious because a man refused to let me marry his daughter, so I killed him." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then, suddenly, Linda's father's expression softened. A warm, nervous chuckle escaped him as he clapped James on the shoulder. "Ah, my dear son, you are most welcome to the family. You are exactly the right man for my daughter." A few days ago, I was leaving an important meeting at a hotel when I instinctively did a TSA-style self-pat-down, checking all my pockets for my car keys. Nothing. I sighed, checked again, and then retraced my steps back into the meeting room. Still nothing. That's when a cold realization struck me. I must have left them in the car. Panic set in. I rushed outside toward the parking lot, my heart pounding. My wife had warned me 1,000 times about my habit of leaving the keys in the ignition. "It's the best way not to lose them," I always argued. "It's the best way to get your cars stolen," she always snapped back. As I burst through the hotel doors, I came face to face with a terrifying truth. Her theory was correct. The parking lot was empty. My car was gone. Without wasting a second, I called the police. Breathless, I gave them my location and blurted out my confession. "Officer, my car has been stolen. I left the keys in the ignition, and now it's gone." The officer took down my information, but before we could go further, I knew I had to make an even more difficult call. I took a deep breath and dialed my wife. "Honey," I started, choosing my words carefully. I always called her honey when I was in trouble. "I left my keys in the car and, it's been stolen." Silence. A long silence. I checked my phone screen thinking the call had dropped. Then her voice finally came through. "Idiot, I dropped you off." My stomach dropped. My face burned with embarrassment. Now it was my turn to be silent. After a moment, I cleared my throat and mumbled, "Well, can you come get me then?" Her response? "I will, just as soon as I convince this police officer that I didn't steal your car." A newly married man from a village went to the city alone to find a job and settle into an apartment before bringing his wife to join him. Once he found a decent place, he wrote a letter to his father back in the village. "Father, please send my wife to the city now." Since the father didn't speak English, he didn't understand what wife meant. Curious, he asked his neighbors, but none of them knew either. Eventually, a meeting was called with the families in the village to discuss what wife could mean. After much deliberation, they concluded that with winter fast approaching, the most important thing his son would need would be something warm, like a comforter. So they decided that wife must be a comforter. The father, satisfied with this explanation, went to the storeroom and found his son's old comforter, now ragged and chewed by rats. Instead, he decided to send him his own new wife to his son. When the man received the package in the city, he was confused. Along with the comforter was a letter from his father. "Dear son, I hope you are well. I went to the storeroom where your wife was kept safely. Since your wife was new and thick when we got it, all of us in the family took turns using it. Your younger brother and I especially liked it. In fact, the neighbors and their guests used it too, and it provided them with much warmth. Unfortunately, after all that use, your wife isn't in good shape anymore. There are many holes in it. So I'm sending you my new wife. It's thick, unused, and I'm sure it will serve you well. Lots of love, Father."